Welcome to the Sage Family Podcast,
where we explore natural, homeschooling, gentle parenting,
simple living, and family adventure.
I'm Rachel Rainbolt, the Sage Parenting Coach, coming to you from the Pacific Northwest, where I live wild and free in connection with my 3 wildlings and the Papa Bear in our fixer-upper on the beach. This is episode 12, and today I'm here with my friend Melissa Lang Lytle talking about sleep. We are going to dive into all those juicy details you want to hear about when it comes to connected sleep. And Melissa is a mama of 3 and also happens to be my bestie. So it's going to be a conversation I know you'll enjoy. So join us around the campfire and let's get living the family life of our dreams. If you are enjoying the Sage Family Podcast, then please scroll down and click those stars in your podcast app or on iTunes. This is a quick and easy way to support the show using the currency of feedback. Now is the time when I share our adventure of the week. Recently, my mom flew up for a visit, and it was just lovely. We attended an RV show because I long to renovate an RV and travel across the country. I'm not yet sure how to make that happen, but I'm learning all the things to help manifest that intention. For the record, for any RV companies out there, we would be a fantastic family to sponsor. Our friends, shout out to Mia and Ruby and Scott, helped us find our ideal layout for a family of 5, and the kids had a blast trying them all out. The next day we went kayaking on the Sound. It was my mom's first time kayaking, and I'm so proud of her. I just love kayaking and would do it every day if I lived on a lake. When I think of future seasons of my life, I picture my husband and I in a lake house, kayaking every morning together. Then we went to Northwest Trek, which is a native Northwest wildlife park. This was our first time here, and we bought a membership pass because it was so peaceful, with an amazing nature-inspired playground. My mom and I wandered through the wooded trails while the kids ran all around with their friends. Shout out to Alicia and her wonderful crew. One of the many reasons I love homeschooling is because we get to enjoy all these places while the schooled kids are sadly locked away. No crowds means more freedom. If you want to see photos and videos of these adventures, then head on over to Sage Parenting on Instagram and follow along. Today is quite a treat because my bestie is sitting right here in my home for this episode about sleep, and our kids are playing outside, so you might hear like squealing and sounds of joy and little trampling feet running in and out. So I connected with Melissa through the natural birth and baby community in San Diego, and then she became a Sage parent, and then we really grew our friendship over Facebook, right? I think that's where a lot of the growth of our relationship happened. And then she moved up to the Pacific Northwest, and we ended up making the same big leap, and we've been inseparable ever since.
Agreed. I was thinking, when did we really make that deeper connection? And I think it might have been your nursing. Because we had been connecting on all these levels, but when it came time for us, we both had the same cause at the same time.
That's right.
So I was remembering that.
It's so funny because, I feel like we've been, best friends forever.
No.
BFFs or best friends forever.
Well, that's how connections are when you really find your people. It's almost like, the continuum is you just step onto the line and it goes backward and forward.
Yeah, it's like she's always been there.
Yeah. I feel that way too.
Yeah, and that happens I think through conversations too, because I'll be sharing something from my past and you'll be supporting me, and then somehow it gets wired in my brain oh, she was there, and she was there for me through that, even though it's retroactively.
Right, and I know I always feel surprised when there's something about you that I don't know. I'm almost a little bit offended. How did I not know that? And I'm reminded that I wasn't there through college. I wasn't even there through your teen world. What am I thinking?
my God, I feel the same way. I love that. Okay, so, and we were actually, full disclosure, I kind of pulled a bait and switch on her because I said we were going to talk about friendship, and then kind of at the last minute, I was like, no, we need to talk about sleep. Like, you're the person I need to talk to about sleep, because there's sort of this flood of experts whispering or yelling in all these parents' ears about what they should and should not be doing around sleep. And so, well, I absolutely could have had like some fancy pants expert come on. I feel like that's not what's missing from the conversation. I want to talk to like a wise, connected, loving, empathetic mama who's like been there with her kids and can sort of speak to all these things on a personal level. So thank you for being game.
Thank you. It took me a while to get to my centered of how I felt about sleep. It took 3 children, actually.
Don't you sometimes feel like I should apologize to my first because they had to be like, you gotta like learn,
and my mom does that with me too. I think she finally figured out some things with me that she didn't do with my sister, who's the 4th in line, but that's part of our process too.
Exactly.
And I do say sorry sometimes, but I think I got, at least as it relates to sleep, I think I figured that out quicker than I figured out some other things. Yeah. There's still a little bit of a struggle with my firstborn.
Yeah, I was just telling you the other day, I went into Bay's room the other night and just apologized for some like random thing that happened like 5 years ago. I was like, just want to let you know I was thinking about it and I'm sorry. And if that had happened now, I would have responded so differently. And I just wanted to let you know. And then we had this lovely conversation about like when you feel that twinge of regret about something in your memory, it's that you can like take a minute to shine a light on it and apologize and learn from it and then move forward and let it go. And it was like this lovely conversation. But yeah, yay for apologies.
Yeah, and that your kids get to see you apologize. And whether or not he remembered that moment, I don't know that he did. Sometimes when I'm apologizing to my children, I'm almost like bringing up something that they're like, Mom, but I know that I need to like set that part of me straight, or that it's unsettled with me. But also that I'm showing them that in my reflection that I regret that decision, but that I'm sorry, instead of just demonstrating somebody who eats the guilt and then it comes out in a...
It's role modeling.
So
because they're going to make choices in their lives. Of course, doing the best they can with the information and tools that they have at the time, but that in hindsight they might handle differently. So It's good role modeling for them too.
I agree.
Okay, so Melissa, tell us your story. Who are you? What are you passionate about? What about your relationships and life fulfill you? What is your relationship with this topic of sleep?
Okay, well, about myself, I am a mom of 3 beautiful children whom I love very much. In fact, I was just reminding them this morning that I was really happy that they chose me and I chose them. I have Benjamin, who's 9, Joseph, who's going to be 8 at the end of next week, and Miles, who is 4.
Oh, there's a birthday coming up.
Yeah.
I need to write down all the birthdays and get them in my calendar, because I always just hear them dropped out. They kind of just fall out of your mouth like that. And I'm like, oh my God, we need to celebrate. Okay.
I know that Bay and Joseph are close in terms of their dates, but I think you and I have had several texts back and forth.
Totally.
Wait, let's set the record straight. When and where and time. What was the time they were born? So I'm married to my beautiful husband for almost 20 years, and we dated 5 years before we got married. So he's basically my family, and we said that this was the year that we've actually been together longer than we haven't been together. So I feel like we turned this corner of like, he's my family. Yeah. And that's really incredible.
Us too.
That's beautiful.
We crossed that threshold a little while back.
Yeah, you guys got married a little younger than we did, but yeah. So, as far as me, I don't know. Ask me which day of the week, it changes, but overwhelmingly looking to be a more grounded, connected human being, and staying open. I don't know whether I said this to you before, but I feel like I'm kind of a late bloomer. And I think that some of the lessons learned probably within the last, at least since Benjamin's been born, of just slowing up and taking it in. And it's been one of the beautiful things about having children.
Yes.
That has kind of...
The presence that it brings.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say necessarily that I was like a selfish human being, but definitely...
You were the worst, Melissa.
Definitely without children, you just kind of live your life in such a different way. I mean, we can still be spontaneous within this like circle of like, do we have snacks? Can we go do this today? But we need to make sure that we have food for that point in the day where everybody is really like breaking down all at the same time. But aside from that, I love being with my kids and my family and my connected friends, and I love what I'm learning, and I love being up here in the Pacific Northwest. I don't really think I ever want to move.
I love it here.
It's like the perfect fertile ground for so many things.
Oh my gosh, yes. So I went to the Naked Lady Spa the other day, which you introduced me to, and we went together, and it was amazing. So I went without you the other day, and it was not as good without you there.
Well, you didn't get shushed, I bet.
That is true. No one shushed me for talking too much. But there were women of every shape and size and age and color, and one of the things I noticed was like body hair. There was like armpit hair and leg hair, and just... I remember going to places in San Diego and it being such a different experience.
Absolutely.
There's like gray hair up here in women, and there's just this whole different culture that like just resonates with me so much.
I kind of love it too. And it's kind of like when we spent time together with the solstice parade, when the first hour or two where it's just the naked bike riders.
Yes.
You have that initial shock just because you're really not around naked people that much.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden it all blurs, and then you suddenly aren't noticing anything about the bodies because they're just also different and unique and special. Now you're focused on the other things like their eyes or their smile or their really...
The body paint, like
awesome
the art of that. Yeah, art
like,
of the
like
body paint.
Glitter, that's awesome. And same with the Naked Lady Spa. Suddenly it just...
So
like
normalizing.
The first 15 minutes, you're like, oh.
Totally.
And then you're like, ah.
Yeah, for the first few minutes, it's like, my vulva's saying hello to the world. and then like, all that it just feels normal. And then you just get to see, well, I think especially too, because the bodies that we tend to see, particularly of women, are in the media, and they're hypersexualized.
Yeah.
And they're not normal bodies. I mean, most of them are photoshopped, and, you have lighting and angles anyways. So even those women don't look like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of refreshing to see human beings being human beings. And I know, I really kind of like that aspect too, without being like, it's not really a voyeurism. It's almost kind of like a very refreshing reminder of how unbelievably human we all are, and that unrealistic perfection bug that sticks in our ear, especially I think with women, dissipates when you're at the Naked Lady Spa, and suddenly you just kind of like focus on what you're there to do, which is to just kind of rejuvenate.
I feel like connected to this like deep, honest sense of womanhood.
Yeah.
Like being around other women with like all the bullshit stripped away.
Yeah.
Like, nope, just showing up. This is like my whole authentic, honest self, and I'm just showing up and like having this radical act of self-love and self-care, and we can all like share this space together.
Yeah.
This message brought to you by... No,
I just was going to say, I'm putting you on the spot here. Next step...
Yeah.
Naked bike riding.
Oh my God. That's on my bucket list. That is full on my bucket list.
I'm nowhere near there. Like, I'll go to the Naked Lady Spa anytime. But like the thought of like putting that's so like way over the vulnerable. Like.
My husband would be mortified. So if you've all listened to the intro episode, you know my husband's like very much introverted and like always fully clothed, and we're kind of like I'm the opposite of that. And so, like when we got together, it was like, oh yeah, I'm a nudist, like in spirit. And just know, like, I fully want to go to like a nude beach, and I want to like naked bike ride. And
poor Josh.
Poor Joshua, right? My poor love. And he's so wonderful. He's like, I'll cheer you on in the sideline and like in a turtleneck. a wide-brimmed hat.
Oh,
Oh,
so
my
funny.
love. Okay. Sleep. Jeez.
Okay.
Okay, so what kind of sleep baggage did you have? Because we have to talk about baggage. And by that I mean, like, what assumptions, beliefs, expectations about children and sleep were you carrying with you as you transitioned into motherhood?
Okay. Well, when you mentioned to me, like, think about baggage, and I guess I didn't even think about it as baggage, because with your firstborn, you don't even really know what to expect. Everyone's like, stay in bed, don't do anything, get lots of sleep, sleep when the baby sleeps.
Oh my God,
you know?
I've heard that so many times.
And I didn't really understand that, or I also didn't understand, like, what this time would bring. And I don't know that it brought up triggers or baggage, but everybody has opinions about what you should be doing with your baby and how they should be nursing and then how they should be sleeping. And those two are often very tied together, because I come from a family of like sleep schedulers and nursing schedulers. And that just did not vibe with me. And it was opposite of everything that my midwife was telling me, because she was kind of my guide. She kind of would come over and she's like, why is the baby not on your breast? And why are you not sleeping? And why are you up?
Why are you out of bed?
And so...
So you had a sage woman whispering in your ear.
I did, and I'm grateful for her. I think my mom did at the time what most women were guided to do at her time, or what worked for her in her life and her personality. I just knew that when it came time for me, this idea of even putting my baby on a schedule or feeding it when it wasn't hungry, even if I was to give it some kind of regimented schedule so that it could depend on it, seemed really opposite of what made sense.
Felt counterintuitive.
And I will tell you, as far as like, again, no baggage, but I remember my mom was so kind. She gifted us a nursery, which is hilarious now. I'm sure you know. I got a beautiful crib, a beautiful dresser, and I think like a changing table. And that was all sold to a beautiful human being who came over, who was expecting her baby brand new a year or two later down the line, because Benjamin never slept in his crib. Or if he tried, it did not work, because he didn't go to sleep when you put him down.
No.
At least my baby didn't.
Yeah.
And so...
We're sort of sold this idea of what babies are supposed to do. One question I got asked all the time was, is he a good baby? Does he sleep through the night? Those two questions, they were, oh my gosh, they were glued together in people's minds. I swear I got asked that every single day for the first year of my baby's life. So you have this vision, like your mom getting that nursery for you, of like, there's the nursery in this separate room, and there's a crib, and the baby sleeps there all night. And don't ever pick up a crying baby, and don't nurse your baby to sleep, and sort of all of these mainstream control and disconnection based mantras that people love to like poke new moms with.
Right. And I remember it not resonating with me, because anytime my baby was crying anywhere throughout the house, even if it was like Matt's turn to hold, I would be kind of, my skin would be crawling. And I just finally got it, that's we needed to be together. Yeah. And knowing now that he's a more highly sensitive, sensory boy, I feel like that I'm glad that that calling came to me, and that I didn't disconnect more, because I don't know how that would have affected him in the long run.
Absolutely.
So it's the one thing I'm kind of glad. I didn't know I was really going against this big, long connection of mainstream. I just knew that it didn't work for me, and my midwife was reinforcing that I was doing great. And so she taught me how to put the baby in bed next to me safely. Yeah. And she already knew that I didn't drink and smoke, so I think I didn't even get the whole spiel of like safe stuff, because she just made sure I had the I forget what you call that little bumper that you put on the edge of your bed. The rail. And she helped me work out so that I could get some sleep, and that I wouldn't go into any kind of like postpartum depression or disconnection from my own self, and be a good mother. Oh my gosh, she like saved my life and my baby's life, I think.
I love that. Yeah, it's like for so many of us, we have this intuition that if we're looking to our babies and ourselves instead of outward messages, societal discourses and other people outside of this mama baby dyad, those messages can be so loud that we can't hear like what our babies are telling us, and we can't hear our own intuition. And there's a whole industry wrapped up in selling you a solution to your baby not sleeping through the night. In order to sell the solution, they have to create the problem.
Sure.
So it's not normal or healthy necessarily for infants to sleep through the night.
Right.
But there's an entire industry around selling you the solution, so they have to create the problem. They have to convince everyone that there is a problem, you know, in order for them to fix it, which is interesting. I mean, coming from me, because I do a lot of sleep coaching, but I'm the first one to say, like there's, I mean, I've come into contact with, it has to be hundreds of like baby trainers and sleep trainers and promising to get your baby sleeping through the night in 3 days, and they espouse all of these things like sleep is essential for survival, and it kind of, a lot of the things they say kind of remind me of politicians when they're like, we support teachers, you know. It's like, well, who doesn't? Like, what does that mean? You know, like we support children, like, okay, what, you know, we support like, it's sort of these like non-statements, like, yeah, sleep is healthy, but what sleep looks like for an infant is different than what it looks like for an adult.
Right.
And so if you are trying to reset the norm for what human sleep looks like in infancy, you're missing the mark. Because that's not what it looks like in infancy. That's what it looks like for adulthood. And the other big thing is that sleep is not a learned behavior. Like sleep is natural. We all know how to sleep. Learning how, or sleeping like an adult develops naturally over the course of time as your baby grows and their brain and body develop.
Exactly. And when you learn more about how the baby feeds too, even if you've chosen or can't breastfeed, you're looking at the size of their stomach, you're looking at their patterns. We're looking at a shorter length of time for everything. And so it makes sense. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I remember getting those questions, like, is your baby sleeping through the night? I remember the good connection too, which is always like, little twitch going on there. But I think with good support, I was lucky enough to kind of sideswipe that, and I took it as an opportunity to really educate. And I would often share that.
That's awesome.
Supposed to, without sounding like this, like, roaring, ridiculous mama who's sleep deprived or something. But
there was a period of time where I was trying so hard to do everything right. And if you've read like my Sage Sleep book, I like totally go into detail about this, that I was struggling to do everything right. Like I had the nursery and I had my baby in the crib, and my baby didn't sleep ever.
Yeah.
Like, and you know, the other big piece, like you brought up with the size of their stomachs, you can't teach them to have a bigger stomach. Right. Like their stomach is tiny. It's like the size of a nut when they're born.
Right.
And so if you don't find a way to meet their needs harmoniously, you know, with meeting your own needs, you're just teaching them that their communication with you and their connection with you is not safe, and you're not going to respond when they reach out for help. Because for them, up until about 18 months of age, there is no difference between a need and a want. So all of their needs are experienced as survival needs. Yeah. And if you don't respond, that is experienced as abandonment. And so that doesn't mean that you are always able or willing to give them everything that they want when they express a desire for something. Right. But it does mean that you respond. So the research is clear that there's a different, the big pieces that you respond. So I struggled with that in the beginning, trying to do everything right, and it just like was not working. And one time my baby was in a crib and was crying, my first baby, and I was clinging to the monitor. We had a monitor, which is so funny now. And I was bawling, and my baby was bawling. And my sweet husband was like, so if the baby wants you and you want the baby, like why are we doing this? Yeah, I don't get it. And then I just like threw the monitor, went and got my baby, and my baby slept with me like from there on out, like no more of the nursery, no more of the crib. And like in that moment of just like, okay, surrender, then everything changed.
Yeah. Yeah. So when my baby was 17 months old, we had our second baby. And it was really beautiful because I'd already figured out some of those things pretty early on.
You had your
and
sea
again,
legs.
my midwife, she's from New York, so she didn't pull any like gentle, let me hold you through this. She was kind of more in a loving, supportive, demanding way. Kind of like, this is ridiculous. This is silly. You see that this is silly, right? And it really helped me because, you know, you're kind of in a daze. And also, I guess I could say I was really trying to do the right thing as new moms. That's all we ever really want to do. We have all these messages that we don't even realize that we've received somewhere in the back of the head. Am I doing this right? Is he hungry? Is she hungry? Like, I don't know. Yes, you do. Yeah. Yes, you do. And if you have someone reminding you that you do know, or to listen and pay attention to what your baby's doing, which I'm grateful to my midwife now who lived in Encinitas, so she wasn't even like a 6-minute drive away. I think she knew she needed to come over and help me a lot. I was an older mom too, so she was like, this one's going to be hard or something. By the time Joseph came along, we already had this like big gigantic bed, and I had him at home, and he just moved on to the right, and Benjamin moved over to the other side, and it was just kind of welcoming into this big like den, you know.
Yeah,
So
you had
easy.
your groove. Oh, I love that. Okay, so let's talk about that geography. Like, what sleep arrangement worked really well for you in getting everyone the most rest?
We figured out pretty early on that Benjamin sleeping in bed with us, and it was better for everybody. Yeah. There wasn't any getting up and getting down for like the breastfeeding schedule. I mean, he nursed on demand, so it was really easy. So if he needed a nurse, I literally was right there. My midwife was so funny. She's like, "Why are you even wearing a shirt?" I'm like, I don't know. She's like, "Make it easy access." I'm like, okay, I do have neighbors and a lot of windows. But like he had because we breastfed, so he had the breast right there, and then the same just kind of moved over for Joseph. Like it just kind of was like this easy transition. Yes. And so Matt got sleep, I got sleep, the baby got sleep, and then when the new baby came along, the new baby got sleep. Yes. And that was the big transition for us because I had a 17-month-old and a newborn. So those bits of really good, delicious sleep for everyone were really necessary. Yeah. And we were all going to kind of not do well with this new experience we were having, right? Yeah. That transition from 1 to 2 for a lot of people can be really challenging. But the one thing that wasn't challenging was our sleep. And that was kind of our safe space. Yes. So it was really beautiful.
And I see that so much when I work with families through sleep coaching. Like, it's really so much of that baggage and those discourses that are blocking people from getting to that space of like sleep being a respite and this harmonious space of restorative rest within connection. Like a lot of people have this boundary that they've inherited that connection and sleep are mutually exclusive, and they are 1,000% not. Yeah. And that connection is what leads to independence. The more connection,
silly
the more
independence, right? We're gonna let's get these babies independent. Let's just move them out of the way of your earshot and into their own nursery. Yeah. I mean, they figured that out with the data pretty quickly when they started taking, babies from their mamas in the hospitals, and I think that's why hospital have changed over time. But the nursery sat. And it was basically this extra bedroom that we didn't even use. In fact, we finally figured out that a king bed for the 4 of us really wasn't working because my husband's tall and needs a lot of space, and Benjamin's kind of kicky and movie. So we just added a queen bed right on next to that king bed pretty quickly. Family bed. And I didn't even know what a family bed was at the time. We were just being pragmatic. We were like, you know what? If we had an extra bed in here, Matt was like, I could have the queen. I'm like, what are you talking about? But that's kind of how it went down. And then Benjamin slept between us in the king, and then me, and then Joseph on the other side. Yeah. And we all even got better sleep than we did in the king bed.
That's so beautiful to be able to hold the space for your family's needs. And you're sort of like pushing back on all of these other messages and shoulds and should nots and all of that. And then within that space that you're holding, it's like then you have the room to meet your family's needs and to do what's right for your family. Right. And I love that. James McKenna has so much great information And he calls it even breast sleeping. Like this is like the normal evolutionary way that human beings sleep in the first 2 years of life is this breast sleeping. And within that bed sharing, co-sleeping, nursing, on cue relationship, there are so many benefits, and moms report getting better and more sleep, which makes perfect sense, right? I mean, if every time your baby gives you some sort of cue that they have a need and you have to wake up, stand up, like put on a robe, walk to a different room, pick up a baby, sit in a chair, like go through that whole thing, like you're not getting any sleep. Like when my kid...
Well, that's forcing you to wake up into a zone where you're not in that. I forget what you call it. You probably know because you're profesh, but what's that, like dream sleep or whatever that like is, where you're kind of in this lull of like you're not fully awake, but you're aware enough where your baby is. And you know, I think a lot about we have a mutual friend that we adore that adopted, and so she formula fed, and I'm sure you have really great advice too. There's some nice in between that even if you're not breastfeeding, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't find really good solutions for you and your baby to stay connected in this sleep space, you know?
So much bonding happen. I mean, like working moms too. When you are sharing sleep, like your little one and you, it's like this hyper bonding experience, and it's completely passive. So like you have all this stretch of time all night long where your baby is smelling you and having skin to skin contact with you, and their heart rate is getting in sync with yours, and they're breathing, you know, all of these like amazing, wonderful things are happening, and it's completely passive. Like you're just laying there. When I was doing sleep coaching and I had a little one, people would always ask me like, how many times a night does your baby nurse? Like that was the question I'd get all the time. And I never had an answer. Like I have no idea. Oh my God. No idea. No clue. They just like attach themselves and drink. Like I don't, you know, or whatever their needs are, like me just laying next to them seemed to meet them all. So I have no idea.
I couldn't figure out why everyone asked that question until I had started reading some sleep scheduling books to kind of just, I wanted to see what all this like buzz was about.
Yeah.
And then it was all broken down with time and feeding. And I was like, okay, now I understand why people are asking. That makes sense, because this somehow has been the litmus test of whether your baby is getting enough, which I find
and
so
whether
funny.
your baby is good and whether you are successful as a parent. Are you a good mom depends on, is your baby sleeping through the night? How many times do they wake at night?
Yeah.
Like that is like the bar of,
right.
Are you a good parent?
And I think because we put so much emphasis on sleep, and getting good sleep means that you feel robust and are having a great day. But the irony is in America that most adults are actually not sleeping that great.
Yeah.
And some of the insomnia that I'm having right now, I crack up. It has nothing to do with whether or not my children are in bed with me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I went to bed at 8 thinking that was a good idea, and now it's 2 and I'm awake. Which is really funny. I actually think I might have gotten better sleep, at least for this time, this little place in my life where I'm finding new energy, and I just find that a crack up. And yes, that is the question. It's kind of like when couples get married, that everyone wants to know when the baby's coming along. And then the baby comes along and they're like, are they sleeping through the night? You're like, why is that a question? Yes. Like, how about, like, are you doing that?
When I'm in like groups of people and someone, I still hear that conversation all the time. Someone will be like, oh yeah, I just had a baby, and everyone says, oh, congratulations. And there's always someone who asks, are they sleeping through the night? And I always call them out on it. Yeah. That is not a question for new parents. Like, no. Aww. No. Gosh. So when people used to ask me that, of course, because I'm super like sarcastic and because I have the confidence and the sort of knowledge base and experience,
and you're nice
to not
and
feel
not bitter. You actually have a nice voice.
So I feel like if you have the privilege of being willing and able to say something, then it's your responsibility to say something. Absolutely. Because there are so many, if someone comes up to you and asks you a question like that, which is not a question, it's a statement. It's saying your baby should be sleeping through the night. I mean, that's what they're saying. And if they say, is he a good baby? Is he sleeping through the night? They're also saying your baby's not a good baby if they're not sleeping through the night. I know. So if you are able to speak to that person, you're going to prevent them from going and saying that to 20 other new moms who might deeply be affected by that. Right. So I would always say something, and anytime someone would come up and ask, that question, my husband would be like, oh God, here we go.
Yeah, Matt too. He's like, why do you have to be the rabble-rouser? Why?
Yes.
And he says that because I think, Joshua and Matt are similar in the sense they are a little more introverted. They don't necessarily need to have this type of conversation with everyone in the grocery line. But I often saw it as an opportunity also, because as I kind of started to get my groundedness and learned a little bit more about attachment, or where we were disengaged and where people were just asking questions out of habit and not understanding things, I just felt it my duty to enlighten them. And the funny thing is I listened to a program on the way home this morning that talked about the secret. So you have all these moms that are like really secretly sleeping with their babies. Then you have these moms that really secretly know that their children aren't sleeping through the night, but they feel the need to tell this perfect stranger because they've associated good with sleeping through the night, that of course their baby's good. So yes, my baby's sleeping through the night. Right now. Yes. And so then they're continuing this silly myth by saying, yes, of course. And then, oh, that's so great. Oh, you just enjoy your baby. And all these things. It's like...
So I talk about this in the Sage Sleep book, and I refer to it as the veil of shame. And it contributes to this huge body of anecdotal evidence where all of these other moms you encounter, their babies are sleeping through the night. So what am I doing wrong? And what's wrong with me? And what's wrong with my baby?
Yeah.
Just because there's this shame piece that everyone's saying your baby should, and if they're not a good baby and you're not a good mom. So no one's being honest. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say no one, because we're here talking about it, but a lot of people are not being, and it's not, there are people who I am very close to who, I was there, staying at their house, and their babies would wake up crying at night, and I hear them tell people, no, my baby's always slept through the night. It's like, okay. I was there, I heard them crying, and you ignoring it, and which there's, I fully support parents in their choices, and it's not a judgment piece, it's just speaking to that I think there are two components. One, there's the shame of not wanting to say something that's shamed by society. Right. And then there's also the other piece of reinterpreting. We interpret our experiences and assign them meaning and then save them to our memory. And so there's sort of your interpretation of those events. They can be interpreted differently by different people. And so from me, being there and hearing the baby wake up and crying, and you saying no, leave her. And then your experience of that is that, no, they always slept through the night. There's this interpretation piece that I think it's overlooked too. It's not objective. It's definitely subjective.
Sure. And I'll be honest, as a doula and somebody who's heavily involved in birth advocacy and speaking on behalf of, women who have babies and connecting, I know that there's a piece of both postpartum depression and the mom that just cannot make it work. And I know that sleep scheduling does work for some families. I know that some families get there out of desperation and feel that they have no choice. I think that there's probably space to still have conversations about that so that it's not shame-based, so that people who get to that point where they really feel they're frustrated, and it could be something like tongue tie, diet. There's other factors that go into maybe why your baby isn't sleeping. Yeah. And it's really hard when you're maybe working and sleep deprived to kind of try to diagnose all those things by yourself. So you're at this last part, okay, I'm just going to have to get some sleep so that I am not kind of like this.
Well, they don't know there's another way, which is a huge part of why I do what I do and why I do sleep coaching and have this book, is not because I want to go around telling everyone they're doing it wrong, but because I want to offer this other path that so many people who were raised on, in this mainstream parenting mindset don't know exists. They are dying of tiredness and they don't know how to move forward with connection. They just don't know.
Well, that's the funny piece when you're like, do you have any links of support or experts? And I'm like, duh. I mean, you and my midwife, but I pretty much send everyone I know to you.
Well, thank you.
I mean, there's some stuff on the internet that people have started to hear about co-sleeping and the safety of it, and is it really safe, and kind of going through the muck. But I mean, talk about where I send people. It's 100% to you, but so I don't have any extras.
Okay, so sleep arrangement, and that's part of one of those things that helps moms get way better sleep and helps babies get way better sleep. Yeah. And we did like a sidecar crib, and we had sidecar bed. I'm a huge fan of floor beds. Yeah. And that can look like a mega family bed. It can look, I mean, I've helped families when figuring out what their sleep goals are, have such a wide variety of sleep arrangements. Sometimes that means the little one's in their own room. Yeah. Sometimes it means they're in the same room but not connected. The sleep surfaces are not connected. Sometimes it means they're on the same bed. Like, it can look, there's no one way for it to look. Right. But I have found floor beds to be universally ideal. Like, I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of families in sleep coaching, and I've not found one that it didn't improve the sleep situation. It just allows for connection and independence in a way that a crib just cannot allow for. Agreed. Because if they're in a crib, A, you can't have connection on that sleep space. It's not possible. Right. And B, you can't have independence. They're completely 100% dependent upon you for everything. So,
or they figure it out pretty fast, and then you see the pictures of the people who are like, oh no, with like the little toddler, like, sprawled, like climbing out of the
baby jail. And this is so, it's so funny. So much of like evolutionary parenting, attachment parenting is so much more cost effective. Like, you don't need to buy all the crap. Like, for the sleep stuff that I talk about, just buy like the twin mattress that they're gonna have their entire childhood, and you're good. Like, we can work with that, and then that's all that you need. Like,
Where
you don't
will this
need anything
twin
else.
Mattress be? Will it be next to?
Yeah. It can start off right next to your bed that you put on the floor, and then we can move it across the room. Then we can move it into their own room. Like, whatever. You have all these different options. Yeah. Right now, we have a bed a twin mattress that lives underneath our bed. So our bed is up on a bed frame now. And then anytime someone wants to join us for sleep, they just pull it out from under the bed and lay in our room. That's
We're
awesome.
Still on the floor. We did move from Megabed. This was actually recently, within the last month. Milo has really expressed this desire for independence, but he's not quite there. Mm-hmm. So often he'll start off in Joseph and Benjamin's room,
where they have like a sibling
they have
situation.
a sibling like bed sharing situation going on. So we actually have a queen bed and then like a twin trundle bed. Mm-hmm. And often what happens is all three will get in the same bed. Although I will say, I've noticed Joseph really likes his independence. Mm-hmm. He doesn't like to be kicked. He's kind of my still baby. He always, I had to check that guy's breathing all the time. But he sleeps like a statue, and he really doesn't want to be kicked or rolled upon. And so he's found solace in his own twin bed. Whereas Milo and Benjamin still like to share a bed, and it's really sweet.
I love that. And the flexibility and the fluidity of like just moving with the seasons and the evolving needs and the blossoming independence and the personal preferred ways of being, like, to just allow for that flexibility and that evolution as you evolve as a family and as you grow as human beings in connection with each other. Sometimes we get so rooted and married to the rightness of a certain way, and
so true.
We gotta keep it loose.
And the minute I step back off of that, I've really let go of where my child should be, because I would say from the get-go, Ben, with some of his needs, he has not been an independent sleeper still to this day. Mm-hmm. Whereas Joseph and Milo, they're on a totally different path. Mm-hmm. So every once in a while, Milo will be like needing to sleep with me, and then he'll, assert his independence and claim a twin bed, and that this is where he's sleeping, and don't move me. And it is really hard. I just need to admit this, because I'm kind of coming off the oxytocin a little
high.
Body next to my bed, next to me in my bed.
Yeah.
And with my last one, kind of deciding that he's going to sleep in the big boy's room, Matt and I are like, what? Okay, hey, honey.
And that's a massive transition for you as a woman, too, especially if it coincides with weaning. Yeah. Because you have this hormonal high of all night long. You're getting, this oxytocin and the dopamine and the leptin, just all this, all these feel-good hormones. And then to have that, drop down real quick can be a rough landing sometimes. And that's something that people don't often talk about. And it's not about, I don't want my child to be independent, or I want to keep them a baby. It's just this physiological, we have to talk about it more, and we have to be more mindful of it and aware of it and see it for what it is and kind of acknowledge it and just incorporate that into our lifestyles as we transition into that new season.
Yeah, and there is, with every transition, there's some level of grief.
Yes.
And it's not grief to be afraid of or hold on to. It's just you have to walk through that process.
Yeah, you know, so often grief brings along with it this character of shame, right? And that's true about, like, death too. Like, we have so much stigma around, like, death and grieving. We don't talk about it. It's shameful. And the same type of grief that you experience through different transitions in life, it sort of brings along with it, there's this, you know, again, this, like, inherited piece of shame. So let's just, like, disinvite shame and feel those feelings. That grief can be a word that describes them really well, when you are having any sort of transition, even good transitions. Like, there can be grief around it. Like, we were talking about houses the other day, right? We used the word grief when we were talking about not moving into the house that you were anticipating moving in. Like, you have to hold the space for, like, a moment of grief around that.
Absolutely. It's funny, I do have to share with you, I just accompanied Benjamin's third grade class to this really beautiful museum and place called Pioneer Farms. It's here locally, just outside of Seattle.
And we're going soon, so you guys are going to hear
with
about
the
that in an
school,
adventure.
which is pretty awesome. But one of the things they shared was how pioneer families live. And pioneer families, for the most part, co-sleep. And if everybody isn't in the same bed, their beds are literally next to each other, because the houses were not like gigantic mansions that they are today. They looked a little bit more like the tiny houses of today, and these what you would call maybe small apartments. And the whole top floor, in order to be more efficient, because that was warmer, whether the stove was cooking down below or it was warm enough in the summer that the heat rose, all the families slept together. And as this lovely woman is explaining what things were better in the Pioneer Farm days, or the pioneering days, excuse me, and then versus today, we talked about technology and electricity and plumbing, but one of the things she really brought about was how close and connected the families were. And as she's sharing that all the families slept together, well, you all don't do that now, and I'm like raising my hand like, some of us do.
Oh my gosh, she said that.
Because I think most people don't sleep like that.
Yes. I talk about that a lot, how there's this wisdom that was lost over the last couple of generations that existed for millennia before that. And we're experiencing as a society a lot of consequences of us being in this space of disconnection and forced premature independence and invalidation of a children's emotional experience, and just there are so many consequences to that we aren't necessarily connecting back. But like the work of Gabor Mate, like with addiction, I mean, all of these things, like it should be the norm. Right. You know, like this is the biological evolutionary norm for human beings. Right. And so to try and force that into being something it's not, like we're all gonna lose.
Yeah, and I'm glad that there's kind of like at least some people connecting the dots and seeing, even if we're just going back to sleep, right?
Yes.
We're going back to sleep. How can I get the best sleep in this fourth trimester time?
Yes.
We've figured out, both with like research and data, that this fourth trimester period, the baby is still in this developmental phase, right? It needs to be close to, next to a human, hopefully most of the time the mother, as much as they can. And then when you look at being that best version of both for baby and mama, we're talking about sleep and what that sleep arrangement looks like.
And so many things tie into that.
Both people, you know?
Yeah. Like breastfeeding, like the breastfeeding rates are abysmal in this country, in the United States. And like, if 50% of the baby's time, because they don't have a concept of day and night in infancy, like if half the time you're depriving them of it, and you know, and the scheduling, just there are all these interconnected forces at play, where sleep just has its fingers in all these other areas too, in postpartum depression, in breastfeeding success, and all of these other things, in marital satisfaction. Like if there's a lot of discord around sleep, like it adds this whole other layer of conflict. And so I think if we can all like have a really good conversation about sleep and start questioning, like I just want to plant seeds, like just sort of question these things. Yeah. and
let's take the shame away. And let's talk about, so if a lot of people are doing this in secret, let's kind of break that open. And what we're most afraid of, right, is because whether it's doctor is questioning, you're not sleeping with your baby, right? And it's unsafe,
not even
right?
get me started on
and so some of the things that come into this mom's play, she's going against perhaps what feels the most right and is getting her the most sleep. And now she's even keeping it secret. And anytime we have that secret piece, we have shame. So then we're not telling our friends and our sisters and our all of the generations that come below us, unless you feel safe enough with that friend.
Yes.
Or whoever you're
unless
connected.
they have a Melissa.
By the way, I'm really... Okay, it's like the people who put their babies on their tummies, right? It's like, okay, if I feel really safe with you, I might admit that I put the baby on the tummy sometimes, only if I'm making sure that I'm observing baby. The same thing goes for sleep.
Yes.
So I just kind of want to like break open the shame piece and really talk about co-sleeping safety if that's what you're interested in. And I know that there's always going to be some reasons of why you can't, and I totally respect that also, but finding a way that you can find that connection and get your best sleep and stay connected to your baby.
I mean, so many pediatricians give out sleep trainers give them like pamphlets that say like at X months of age your baby should be sleeping X amount of hours at night. And one of my favorite questions to arm parents with in any conversation with pediatricians or any other authority-based people in their lives, teachers when we're talking about schooling stuff, is based on what? That's like my favorite question.
That's
so
awesome.
Those recommendations, what are they based on? You know, based on what? Because they're based on nothing. It's bullshit. There is no research that says like a 3-month-old baby should be sleeping 6 hours at night. Based on what? That's just total bullshit. Like, and a lot of it is just people practicing beyond their scope, like they're using their personal opinions to make recommendations, which is totally fine for people to share their personal opinions as long as they are contextualized as personal opinions. Because if you're wearing the hat of an authority figure, people are assuming that the information you're giving them is based on like medical data. But if it's not, like, we need to be honest about that. And have a conversation in that context.
It's so true. And how they collect the data also. So one of the issues I have, especially when it comes to like co-sleeping and the safety of it, I mean, I always felt as like a doula when people would ask me, you know, I had to put that piece, like the medication piece, the drinking piece, the smoking piece, the couch
Sleeping
piece,
on a couch,
all these little pieces that I feel like have been drilled into. But like, where is the data really coming from? And how many people are really talking about it? And then are we talking about only the last few generations? Well, what about all those human beings before that this was actually a survival? Yeah. You know, and I just, it kind of stumps me.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's just lots to ponder.
So much to ponder. So let's talk about sleepscape. The environment is such a powerful force for better sleep that is so often overlooked. Little ones are profoundly sensory beings. So you want to consider all of your child's senses and design a soothing sleepscape with the greatest of intention, including tools for independence. So what things have you planted in the sleep garden that you all found helpful in meeting needs passively?
I would say the beds on the floor were great, so that when children want to come out or into bed, it was easy for them and their little bodies, including, I remember teaching Milo how to roll over and then scoot himself off the bed, feet first off the bed, so that when he was finished with his nap, if Mama hadn't come in and checked in on him, that he could come down at his own level.
Using the bathroom.
Yeah, and I always told Matt, I want my bedroom to feel like a spa. And if that includes a king and queen bed together, how can we make this a beautiful experience?
Yes.
So I always kind of chose like bedding that really felt beautiful and happy and, I don't know, aesthetically pretty in our room, even though we had these 2 giant beds that took up most of the room. I would say, for the most part, that's been it. And the same with when we moved the bigger boys into their room when they asked. Just did the same exact thing. Started with beds on the floor. And then when they were ready, they're asking for bunk beds and all kinds of other beds that they've chosen now independently on their own.
Collaboration.
Yeah, exactly.
Always with collaboration. Okay, so, let's talk about the senses a little bit. So sight, like minimalism is really important in a sleep space. And when I do coaching with families, I have them email me photos of the room where all of the sleep is happening. And because that's such a powerful thing that is really so often overlooked. I think because of habituation, when there are things in the room that have been there so long, you don't see them anymore. Yeah. You kind of habituate to them. But every single item in the room has an energy that babies and parents react to. We have a reaction to it. And I know that sounds like woo, but it's totally legit, because when you look at an object, even if you want to get like scientific with it, you look at an object, you are hit with memories about that object. It calls to mind certain feelings, brings up emotions and thoughts. The more contrasting the patterns and the colors, and the more out of place those objects are, the more energy is spurred in you and gets pulled out of you into that object. And that includes little ones. They react to all of the items in the space. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, having that like as cleared out as possible. Clear out that space. So it's a space, like you said, like almost spa, like for sleep, like a sleep spa. Like you want to have all of the clutter gone. Think about calm neutrals. Nature, bringing nature into the sleep space is a powerful force for sleep, which is funny. A lot of people don't think about it. But when I help families, when they come to me with this idea of the nursery, instead of just saying like, no, we're going to throw that away, I try and shift it into the sleep space. So like when you're talking about like nursery decor, like it's so fun, nursery decor. So go out into nature, and I want you to collect objects like as a family that you can make into nursery decor. Like
that's beautiful.
We collected sticks on this hike when I was pregnant with West. And we bundled them together and got fishing line and butterflies and like hung all these butterflies from the fishing line, and we like hung it over the window. And so all of this like sort of nature-based decor, it's grounding and soothing to us on like a subconscious level. So like skip the brightly colored and patterned like cartoony stuff and go for like nature-based
soothing
neutrals.
All I could think of was soothing. I didn't even know all that information. So that's good to have, and that's really incredibly intentional. I know that we cleared out the clutter, and again, when you decide to do something like a big family bed, often there isn't room for anything else. We did a Himalayan salt lamp so that you can have like a nice dim glow. I didn't want anything.
So that's the next
really,
thing I was
really
going to say with sight. Warm light. So light is actually, research has shown that that's a significant thing, is that white blue light, which is what all light bulbs and screens are, stimulates awakening, whereas orange, red, yellow light triggers sleepiness. And I always think of a campfire. Yeah. Like if we are evolutionary trained, throughout the millennia of humans evolving to feel safe and ready for sleep around a campfire, like it's that light. So Himalayan salt lamps, that's one of the things that I have like bookmarked that I include a link with all of my sleep coaching stuff. They make that perfect light. The ones that we have one in each of the kids' rooms, and they have a dimmer. Yep. So as part of the bedtime routine, when my kids are reading their own books, like that's the light that they're using to read their own books. So I highly recommend that.
And it's a great nightlight too. So if
great.
You have a child that really still needs a little bit of light in the room to feel safe, whether you're in the room or not in the room, I think it's like the perfect nightlight.
And if it has a switch that they can control, then you're opening this doorway of independence that, again, all those toddlers that are in cribs don't have access to that. So if you have a little one, I mean, even a 12-month-old, you'll see them if you give them, like the Himalayan salt lamp we have has this dimmer that's kind of like this circle that you turn.
Same with ours.
A 12-month-old will just turn it back and forth 100 times, like, which is so great. And then during the night, if they feel like they need a little light, they can just turn that little light up, even at such a young age. With access and inclusion and connection, like explosively blossoms independence. So if they feel secure and they have access, they can do that all on their own and they don't need your help with it. So light, that's a really important one too. So smell, of course, you are the most relaxing scent to your little one. So when you're co-sleeping, even if you didn't do anything else, even if you didn't touch them, even if you weren't nursing, nothing else, just your smell is this. So I try and sometimes describe it like a love cup. When your child falls asleep at night, they have a love cup, and we'll talk more when we talk about routine about filling that love cup as full as it can go. But your scent is one of the things that keeps it fuller longer. It slows the rate of depletion of that love cup that helps them to sleep longer. Because again, we have to think of it from an evolutionary perspective when we're talking about sleep, that if if an infant is abandoned, then they are prey, right? They are 100% dependent upon us when they are young. And this is especially true of the predator-prey dynamic. A lot of little kids who are afraid of the dark, they're afraid of nocturnal predators. It's an evolutionary, it's an evolutionary thing because our greatest predators hunted at night. So this is completely normal and makes perfect sense. Okay. And so little ones, if they are smelling you, that's their cue that they are getting that they are still being watched over. If that scent is gone, then those levels drop very quickly and they're triggered to awaken and re-engage a loving caregiver just to ensure their survival. Like these are survival instincts and they make perfect sense when you think about them in that context. They really do. Because a baby who doesn't care if their caregiver is nearby, they are way more likely to have been eaten and thus their genetics were not passed on.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And same with that fear of the dark. Little ones who have a very heightened fear of the dark were more likely to survive. They were more likely to not go wandering off into the bush in the dark of night and get eaten. Right. So that is why that trait was selected for. So it makes complete and total sense why that would be there. So something you can do to help with that is like the shirt you wore that day. Like if you aren't sleeping like skin to skin, just take off the shirt you wore that day and plant it in their sleep space so that they are like sweaty, milk stained.
Yeah, all the stuff that you want to throw in the washer for every reason your baby's
Don't wash
it.
Exactly. That is one of the great things that you can do. If they get to that almost awake or awake point, which they get as they cycle through sleep cycles about every 45 minutes. If they have that smell, that helps them to slip back into that next sleep cycle. They smell you and they say, oh, I'm safe, and they can slip back into that next cycle. And then, of course, essential oils like lavender, chamomile, things like that are especially soothing. They're soothing for baby, but they're really soothing for mom. And a calm, restful, not anxious mom helps babies sleep better. Like research shows if mom is anxious or depressed, babies don't sleep anywhere near as well. So that's something that helps to calm you and helps to calm baby.
Yeah, lavender is
time.
like my jam.
Yeah, like a diffuser, having a diffuser in the space is a great idea. As part of the bedtime routine, I recommend massage, and we like to use coconut oil, and I can even put like a drop of the lavender. I really like chamomile too in the oil, or we do a nightly bath every night, a shared bath, so I might put like a drop in there. Yeah. Again, it helps also to shift the brain from the awakened state of mind, whereas during the day everything is different, and then at night we're shifting gears. It helps to actually shift that gear, like changing the scent.
Yeah, we used Dr. Bronner's lavender Castile soap. Was like that was our thing. It's just so good.
It smells so yummy. All right, now sound. So your heart and your breathing, obviously, again, bed sharing takes care of that. Sometimes babies forget to breathe. That's one of the theories that's wrapped up in SIDS. There are a lot of different components that they're looking at, but one of them is that sometimes they almost forget to breathe. And you can see this sometimes when you're awake and watching over them. You're sort of like you hear that sound stop, then you're kind of looking more closely, and then after a few minutes you'll hear and that's to a certain extent, that's normal. And the feeling of your breath and the carbon dioxide blowing in their face actually reminds them to continue breathing all throughout the night. And so that sound is part of it as well. Like that they can actually hear your heartbeat, they can hear your breathing, and that's like a cue to their body, almost like a reminder.
Well, they were connected with you for
almost 4 weeks. These mimic the sounds of the womb too.
Right.
The sound of your heartbeat and your breathing, that whoosh whoosh of your breath, mimics the sound of the womb. This is
and the blood flowing through. I remember my midwife was like, "Get yourself a sound machine if your baby's really struggling, because that will kind of mimic the sound of the blood whooshing past in that sound, because their ears were right next to your organs."
Exactly. And it was loud. It was loud inside your body. It was never quiet. So also bringing in some sort of sound machine. Whales are actually my favorite. I've seen the most success with little ones if you have sounds of whales. And it doesn't even have to be fancy tech. You can just pull up on YouTube. There are videos. It's 10 hours of underwater and whales, or 10 hours of rainforest nature or a bubbling brook, whatever, Yeah. So doesn't have to be fancy here. Sounds 60 beats per minute seems to be really the sweet spot. So even if you want classical style music, you want music at 60 beats per minute. Again, you can just Google that. Like even on YouTube, there's like 8 hours of 60 beats per minute music. So you can absolutely get a fancy like sleep sheep that has whooshing sounds of the womb, or not, because it also needs to be a sound that you enjoy. Like I actually get super irritated by white noise and sounds of the womb. I get so irritated.
He's like, I think the people are talking to me. He's like, it makes me feel like I'm actually losing my mind a lot. So for him,
I hate
the
that
sleep
sound.
machine actually really upsets him.
Bingo.
Where for Benjamin, it's like this. It's the sweet thing.
Yeah.
So
so you have to like balance that, right? What helps the entire family get more sleep. Right. And there's so much flexibility in that. I mean, even as we're talking about like sight and scent and sound, like we're incorporating all the family's needs, and all of their needs are valid. And so we want to harmoniously make them all.
I just, once I got the sleep
It's
machine,
so soothing.
I don't think it was until way after Joseph came, Matt finally was like, all right. I'm like, why didn't you tell me earlier? Because I think in his mind, he was like, this is so good for the babies, and I am getting sleep.
Yeah.
But, there's this time where it can be disruptive.
Yeah.
And so we actually removed it, and then our babies had already gotten past that point where they really needed that sleep machine. And so I think our breathing was sufficient.
Yeah. It's interesting with the whales. I think where I have seen it to be most helpful is that, it has the soothing underwater sounds, but then there are also the whales that like arc in. And what I have seen is that when babies wake or almost awake during the night, that the sounds of the actual whales almost engage their attention just enough that they're not seeking other sensory input, but not so much that it stirs them awake. It's sort of this sweet spot of like engaging the brain kind of just enough.
That's lovely.
So they hear it, and sometimes you can see them, like their eyes will flutter for a minute, and they'll kind of like, you can tell they're listening, and it's almost hypnotic, and then they fall back asleep. It's really beautiful. See, I love my job.
I like to watch babies sleep. That's for sure really awesome.
Better than that. Okay, touch. Again, all these things, so many of them are overlooked, but they are really more powerful than you think. So if you're bed sharing, you, of course, are the most powerful thing. Just that skin-to-skin contact is like chemical, hormonal magic. But fabrics, too. Like, what fabrics are soothing to your little one? So Sky has always loved like the silky texture. That was always incredibly soothing to her. None of my other kids wanted anything to do with it. So again, it's really about just getting to know your little one and what is soothing to them, because it's not universal. But so try different fabrics and textures and see what feels good for them. I'm like all about the flannel. Like, when my skin's on flannel, it's like, I just want to like
so soft and
snuggle
cozy.
and go to sleep. Yeah. So jersey cotton is a good one. Flannel is a good one. But be aware of what is soothing for your little one. So like Sky, as soon as she was old enough to have a pillow, we bought this like silky pillowcase, and that like her sleep was like so good with this silky pillowcase, which I would never want to sleep on, but she loved it, like, because that is her texture. So you want to think about like the bedding, but also like what are they wearing? Some little ones sleep better naked or in a diaper. Some little ones want like tight, like footed pajamas. There are sleep sacks. You have all these different options. Swaddling, of course, would fall under touch, which I never swaddled my little ones, but they slept pressed up against me. With bed sharing, I tend to steer families away from swaddling because they tend to... Swaddling can work well if your baby is sleeping on their back on a separate sleep surface. Right. So I'll put it that way in terms of like safe bed sharing. When you're bed sharing, they tend to be oriented toward you. Babies and moms are almost always oriented toward each other. And so in that context, it's better for them to have more freedom of movement, so they can sort of roll themselves onto their back or orient toward the breast a little bit better.
I figured that out after Benjamin with Joseph. Although with Benjamin, and I don't know if one is connected to the other, but I feel that it is. I mean, he has some sensory issues, and so swaddling was really the only way that little sweet thing felt safe wherever he was. So we even swaddled his arms for a while in his car seat at the beginning of his life, because he just, too much flailing, too much unsafety, too much disconnection from the world. He couldn't even engage at all. But after a while, but my other two didn't even bother.
Yeah.
They were always pressed up against my body.
Exactly.
And then Joseph pretty quickly was like, and I'm done nursing and I'm good.
I'm good. Bye, Mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and with temperature too, because the mom's chest actually regulates the baby's body temperature when they're in proximity. So if baby's body temperature, and they study this, if baby's body temperature lowers, the output of heat from your chest rises. So there's this intricate balance. And if they're swaddled, that impedes that. It gets in the way of that. They can overheat more easily, and then you're not reading their body temperature as well. Right. So again, it's so much of this is about like stripping away. It's like minimalism with sleep, which is so funny. I've never thought of it in this context before.
Makes sense, though.
Yeah, right? Like stripping away all of the stuff and all of the things and all of the contraptions as much as possible. And it's just like you and your baby.
Yeah.
So also transitional object can be helpful. Most little ones don't gravitate toward one until you start pulling back on the nursing or until they start pulling back on the nursing. So it's not like abnormal if they don't have like a stuffed animal or blanket or whatever. But it can help with sleep long term if you want to nudge down the path of independence a little more, to have one specific object that they like that you keep in that sleep garden, planted in that garden. Because then you build that association between all of the feel-good, safe, nourished feelings of being cuddled and nursing. The blanket gets drenched in that as well, or the stuffed animal. So then if you pull back on one of the other things, like maybe the nursing or maybe your presence, they still have that. Exactly.
Yeah, my kids never used any of those. We didn't have any of those, but my nephews and niece did, and it was the most precious thing. They had these little silky square things, and they were just so cute.
Sky loved those. Yeah. And like I said, if you're like bed sharing and night nursing, they tend not to use them because they don't need it. It's sort of like a little substitute in a certain way. But it can be really nice if you do want to nudge a little more down that path of independence. It's one of those tools that you can use. So like my kids did not gravitate toward one at all until they had like this big shift toward significantly more independence at night. And then they would pick up a stuffed animal or a blanket or something. So before that, they didn't have one at all. Temperature, you want to make sure the temp is just right for your little one. And again, each little one has a different temp that they favor. Keeping the room just like a degree or two cooler than you think is ideal will lower the risk of SIDS. So we tend to overheat babies. Yeah, like big time. Big time we overheat babies.
Too. She's like, why is this room 72?
Yeah.
And Matt was like, because the baby, she's like, draw that back to a nice like 67, 68.
So funny too, because if you're like, we're baby wearers. If I would be out with a baby, my babies were always like in a diaper or like a cotton short sleeve onesie, and that was it. Like no matter the weather, because they were wrapped up on my chest, and I would just put the layers over both of us. Like I would button up my sweater around both of us, or zip up my jacket around both of us, and my chest like regulated their body temperature. Sometimes I would have like baby leggings that I would put on their legs, but that was really it. Maybe a hat if it was super cold. But people would always come over and like dote on that. Like, your baby's cold. And of course, I'm a little sassy. I'd be like, oh, really? The baby feels cold to you from over there across the room? Because on my chest, he feels perfect.
Again, you have that like really fantastic sense of humor, like your dad. I'm just too bitter, I think. Like, I'm going to say a snarky comment, and I would just keep it to myself and smile. The only time I feel like I got really good at comments was when people constantly called, people want to make a gender, figure out what gender your child is, and they've decided that only girls have long hair. And they're just so upset and shocked if you have long hair. And they're just like, and so Matt would always just be like, Benjamina, Josephina. And that was a big joke, because I would always be like,
having
so
like a prepared,
I didn't have any good comments like you did.
Having like a prepared statement that you say every time you hear, because there are some that you hear over and over. Yeah. So like having something that you're prepared with can be really helpful. It stops you from like sort of getting knocked off balance, off your center.
Totally
like,
true.
Thank you for your concern. We're really connected. I've got it covered. Yeah. Like, you can be really nice and polite. I tend to like be a little more sassy, but a little more sarcastic, just because that's my style. But that's okay if it's not your style. Yeah, just have something prepared in advance. I found that helps a lot because then you're not like, well, she doesn't feel cool to me, and like just have something prepared so you can just like deflect it.
Yeah.
Okay, touch having a high connection bedtime routine. Like this one is huge. Like I said, and we'll talk more about routine, but you really want to fill that love cup going into sleep so that all those feel good hormones and brain chemicals are as high as they can possibly go. Going into that first stretch of sleep, which is the longest. First stretch of sleep is the longest.
That makes sense. It would be the most important, and I think that's the one we probably, as parents, forget because it's at the end of our day.
Yeah.
Where our cup is like tapped out. I know that sometimes
so much, yes.
My issues with bedtime routine are where I haven't really set the intention and made that really important, and my kids totally feel it.
Yep, so much, yes. And that's so important because that really is huge in determining how the rest of your night is going to go. And then as they get older, there are other things like books. Like I love reading a couple of books every night at bed. Your high connection bedtime routine should always be on their sleep surface. And again, we'll talk more about this in a second. But just planting a lot of those objects that you use as part of a high connection bedtime routine in their sleep garden, so like around their sleep surface, so that they can access them as they start to reach for that independence. So it's there for them. Is so helpful. Again, like. We're putting little ones in cribs and isolating to accessing all the things that we access during the night. Like we'll reach for a cup of water, or if we can't sleep, we might like pick up a book. So if your kids can access all of these things, then you have the door open to independence, which is what we all want.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Okay, and then taste last, like nursing, having water nearby for mom and for baby.
That last cup of water as your toddlers get bigger, right?
Yeah. So if you have it there that they can access on their own, like bingo, so much
and
more
don't
independence.
Necessarily need to go downstairs or down the hall to get it,
and they don't need you to go get it.
So true.
Yeah, we want them to be able to eat, to meet their own needs. Again, that marries so perfectly with connection, like because you can be one of those needs, but they can also sort of access all that on their own. Like if my kid needed to nurse, they would crawl over to me and snuggle up and nurse. Like I didn't, there wasn't anything I was doing actively. All right, so now let's talk about routine, because routine is another important area that sometimes surprises people because we overhaul the entire daily rhythm in addition to the evening routine and sleep coaching to like holistically meet a child's needs. So what aspect of your rhythm have you found to make a significant impact in the quality and quantity of sleep you have enjoyed as a family?
Well, I figured out pretty quickly that because my firstborn had kind of ramped up at night, and baths were not his thing. That tended to be a sensory overload for him. So stopped doing baths at night and just setting the intention of what time we were going to go to bed. So how we kind of backtracked it, like what time do we read? Let's dim the lights about an hour before bed. And we have some of those things that you mentioned, although I didn't consciously think about it. But books near the bed. Are we going to color or draw before bed? Am I going to read a story? Are we going to listen to an audiobook? One thing that I find really special in my family is as we're kind of like moving toward getting pajamas on and brushing teeth, and we use the bucket system, so this is all kind of part of their already in our flux routine, is we do something called 4 questions. And this is where we kind of come together as a family as we're laying down and bedding down. The lights are off or dim, and we all kind of check in with each other. And so we ask 4 questions, and that is, how were you brave? How were you kind? How did you fail? And what made you happy today? And it gets everybody quiet because they're thinking about their own answers, but also listening to their siblings or their parents. And, they always want to hear daddy and mommy's too, because if daddy failed or mommy failed, that's really important for little ones to hear these things,
The role modeling.
So,
there's so much amazing research about the benefits of journaling, particularly at bedtime. And I sometimes refer to what you're describing as conversational journaling.
Okay.
So it's, when they're little, it's conversational journaling, which takes all of the benefits of journaling and elevates it. And as they get older, you can sort of, layer in like deeper things like, what are you grateful for is a really good one to have, especially at the end of the day. Also like, share with us something that you would like an experience you had today that you would respond differently to in the future, or even just like having them come up with like these questions can just be so powerful. And to do that in connection, it's like a journal with connection.
Yeah, and I like kind of wrapping up the day with a reflection of the day.
Yeah,
and one of the things,
it consolidates memories too.
Oh, well, I didn't know that, but
Yeah.
I know that one thing I always thought about was like as you're going into sleep, that you work really hard to like kind of like this like forgiveness piece, both of yourself and maybe somebody who has done something against you, and that takes like a certain level of reflection.
Absolutely.
And really trying to set the intention for the next day before you go to sleep, versus carry all that garbage with you into this beautiful space that you want to like give your body rest. I
love that. It's like you're carrying all these things in your hands, and through this process you're describing, you can just set them down. Okay, I can set these down now for sleep.
And you probably know about this more than me, but really, until my children's bodies are still and quiet and in the dark, they often don't process parts of their day. And so I find out what happened with so-and-so and so-and-so right before my little ones go to sleep.
Yep.
I was really upset about this person said this to me and it made me feel like this. And I always get all that juicy goodness.
Yep.
Literally, like I can like look at my clock like 8 minutes before they cross over to what Matt and I call the other side.
Yes. Absolutely. That is completely normal, and that is part of that consolidation piece. Like, so what happens is we're having all these experiences throughout the day, and then when we lay down to go to sleep, we have to interpret them and assign them meaning, which is how we create the narrative of who we are and how we are connected with others and our place in the world, is through this process of assigning meaning to our experiences. And the like golden time for that is right as we are falling asleep, because when we cross over into the other side, as you said, our subconscious runs with that. So as we are moving from the waking world to the sleeping world, we want to, that's basically putting intention to the meaning that your mind is going to permanently save of your experiences for the day. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's beautiful though.
Yeah. Yeah, it's this amazing process. And what you're describing is that like you get to be a part of that for your children.
Yeah.
So many parents are like, my kid won't stop talking, like at bedtime. Like, it's bedtime. Voice is off. Yeah. Yeah, go to sleep.
That's the good stuff. That's how I find
that
out
is
all the
the
things
juicy
in my child's
stuff.
life, instead of
Yes.
like, I know some parents are like, what did you do today? Or how was school today? Or, you know, fine.
Yep.
Just wait.
Just wait till bedtime, and they will want to talk to you about it. So like you said, we dial back the start of the bedtime routine to hold the space for that. Like I say, hold the space for at least 15 minutes of quiet conversation every single night. So, you know, if you only have the time that you're holding the space for like 2 stories and a kiss goodnight, like then you're going to be stressed and you're going to be shushing them and you're going to miss this golden opportunity. So just dial back that start time of the bedtime routine so that you're holding the space for that.
Which takes a lot of intention.
100%.
Because you really have to kind of coordinate what time you're eating dinner.
Everything
and then what
dials
time
back
the other
from there.
partner, if you have one, or if you're doing it, we literally like dim the lights. We literally say, no thank you piano, no thank you instruments, no thank you to this, because we really have to get that intention going. And sometimes that's hard because that's when everybody gets that, what I call the witching hour time, where everybody's like,
Yep. Which is why like very consciously and intentionally mapping out a daily routine is so important and integral to the nightly routine, because they are connected, because it dials all the way back. And you have to meet all of those needs throughout the entire day, or all of the unmet needs of the day are going to come out at bedtime.
oh, totally.
I've
seen it happen over and over again.
Yep.
And when I'm stressed or I'm pressed or I'm on a schedule that's not driving with my kids, it totally backfires on that each time. So for sure.
It's like, because it's like they can hold it together all during the day, but then when it's time to lay down their shield, like it just all comes out. So all of the unmet needs from the day will be vomited upon you at bedtime.
That's true.
So we have to intentionally design our entire lifestyle and our routine, but you have to think of it as like 24 hours. So if like you're having sleep challenges, you gotta look at the whole day. It's
totally true. I mean, they talk about that because we attend a Waldorf school, and they often say you're really working on your bedtime routine from the moment you wake up. Yes, so true.
They are wise. Yeah, so some like tips, like you want to move in one direction with geography and energy. So moving in one direction, as in like maybe you all have dinner in the dining room and then you go upstairs to the bathroom where you do baths and teeth brushing, and then you move into the bedroom where you put on jammies, and then you move to the bed where you do so you're just always moving in one direction. And that's with geography and with energy. So the voices just gradually get quieter, the body gradually slows down. So some families can experience a lot of trouble if they're like going up and down, up and down, up and down. You go brush your teeth, come back and put the dishes away,
for sure.
We want to move in one direction. And I kind of think of it, I conceptualize it, which I know you'll like a labyrinth.
That's beautiful.
It's like it's like the sleep labyrinth. So we have to move in that one direction. And I often tell parents that it needs to incorporate a connected walk. So it can be like an after dinner family walk, but if they're little, it can even be a walk from like the bathroom to the sleeping surface where you're humming and you're swaying. And I sometimes tell people to hang pictures at your eye level for that walk. So as you're walking, you can say goodnight to the people who love you as you make that transition. It's like moving through the labyrinth, you know?
It's really beautiful. I never thought of it like that before. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. And then you want to connect on their sleep surface. This is another mistake, or not mistake, but thing that really helps if you shift. A lot of times people are doing a lot of the bedtime routine like on the living room sofa or in a chair. You want it to take place on the sleep surface because that bedtime routine is like taking a mega hit of all those feel-good, soothing connection hormones and brain chemicals, and you want that to happen on the sleep surface where they're going to be waking up during the night. Okay. Because if they're waking up and they're on a different surface and all the love magic happens over in that chair in the other room,
that makes so much sense.
They want to get back there.
Yeah.
They want, come get me and take me back there. That's where all of the love happens. That's where I feel good. So we want the sleep surface to be where all that love mojo is taking place. So do that bedtime routine on the sleep surface. And after you move through like a high connection bedtime routine, like some massage, some books, some conversation, some storytelling, some lullaby, whatever it is, you want to shift to what I sometimes call passive presence. So you move from pouring lots of soothing love energy into your little one to being in passive connection with each other. So basically you're sleeping, quote unquote. So you're no longer pouring energy into them because that can actually be, they react to that. They react to your energy. So you want to just lay beside, eyes closed, you can have arm around, like they can still nurse if they want to. You're still there, you can gently guide them, but you're no longer, you're not engaging actively. You're not having a
story. It's just, there's just the quiet breathing and then the rhythm comes
it's
into
just
play.
Powerful mirroring, right? Because we mirror the emotional state of the people that we're in connection with. So sometimes with little ones, if they start to show energy, we mirror them, like we rise up to match it. They're wiggly, we're moving around and putting them back, and we're doing this, and if they start talking, we're saying, no, you need to be quiet now because it's sleep time now. And so we are mirroring them. But if you can harness the potential of that if you be the state you want to see in your little one. So
I have to remember that sometimes.
Yeah,
because it can get really wild, and summers here in the Pacific Northwest, it's really funny, but it doesn't get dark until well after 10.
Yeah, we love
it. So I've already given up. It's like bedtime is late and we have it wild so we can, and when it begins to get dark, we begin a whole different routine in summer than we do when it's winter here. Yeah absolutely. Boundaries. So having boundaries is good for us at night we're in the bedroom, or at night we're in bed. So you don't have to sleep because that's something you don't have control over. Absolutely. That's their body, like body autonomy. And don't engage in battles that they can't be about. Yeah, you can't force someone to like pee or poop or sleep or eat. So don't engage in battles around that. What you can set as a boundary is where you are at night. So even when my babies were new, I never got up and walked around the living room with them. We were always in bed at night. So they had me and they had their food, their milk. I could change a diaper on the bed. But the primary attachment figures is the need. Right. They may want, to be awake and playing with toys or whatever, but you can hold that space that at night, this is where we are. And it's okay if you would rather be somewhere else, and I'll listen to that. You can tell me about it. I hear you. You're upset. You wish we could go for a walk. This is where we are at bedtime. Yeah. And, you have everything you need, and I'll be right here for you. And I'm going to be resting. I just need to get the Rachel Rainbow voice because I tend to be like, this is where we're going to be. I have to let loose a little bit and have that like, this is where we're going to be.
And then honoring natural sleep rhythms. With boundaries for respecting various needs. So, of course, like this podcast, we're like tend to be unschoolers and lots of traveling families and whatever. So that's not a huge problem for us. We tend to be hip to the like honoring natural sleep rhythms. But in the mainstream path, it's a lot of like you have to be somewhere early in the morning, so you have to go to bed at this hour. But the more you can honor the natural sleep rhythms of your little ones, the more success you're going to have. Because if they are naturally awake until much later and sleep in later, no amount of like boundaries or forcing is going to make them sleep earlier. It's just not. So shifting your lifestyle as much as you can to honor that. And then having boundaries for respecting various needs. So maybe one of your kids is a night owl and maybe your partner is an early bird. Like, so how do you negotiate? Like, so, okay, what are daddy's needs so that he can get the sleep he needs? Maybe he needs it to be dark. So you guys can, you can be in your space and you'll use your Himalayan salt lamp so that the light doesn't disrupt him. Or maybe it's sound that he's sensitive to. So, you can be up writing or journaling or reading or coloring, but you have to be in your sleeping space, in your separate sleeping space so that it doesn't disturb someone else. So whatever the needs are, you can set boundaries for them.
That sounds great.
Yeah, so everybody gets their needs met. And then daytime, like we talked about. So unstructured outside play, that has to be a part of it. Absolutely. That is the first thing we talk about if a family is having sleep trouble. How much unstructured time in nature are they getting every day? That's so huge. Sense. It's huge. We are biologically, the cells in our body are hardwired to sync our circadian rhythms with the sun. Like we have to be outside in nature for all of those systems to be functioning properly. If we're indoors, just with the white blue lights all the time, our bodies stifled, not free to move, constantly told what to do, like that, all that's going to come out at bedtime. All those unmet needs. So you have to have that unstructured outside play. And then vigorous high contact play, like you were talking about, like West every night at bedtime gets like, this like burst of energy. And so you have to hold the space to meet that need before you get to like the bed portion of your evening routine.
And allow it to happen. Right.
Exactly. Like with little ones, like I say, after dinner, have like crawling around wrestling matches, or this tends to be a place where daddy is really shine too, not to be stereotypical, but just this vigorous high contact play like before you move to like the upstairs or the bedtime portion of the routine tends to work really well after dinner because they get that burst from the food as well. We love, like, we have a trampoline. The kids so often after dinner run out to the trampoline and have like
just get the jumps.
Get all the jumps out, and then we move into like baths and teeth and all the bedtime stuff. And then relaxed play. You have to have space for quiet, relaxed, like that's often fine motor play during your day too. So you have to hold the space for all these different areas.
Yeah,
because if
we
any
kind
of
of
these
like
are not
structured our play areas to have one or the other.
Yeah.
So like our basement area is kind of, we call it the romp room. And it has places where everybody can just kind of bang around, throw balls, wrestle, what have you. And then we kind of have like this little play area where we have like blocks and beeswax and little wooden cars and silks and all that. So there's that quiet play too.
Yeah. And so holding the space for all those different areas of play makes all of the needs of the brain and body met, like throughout the day. It's this beautiful, varied tapestry, and if they're weaving that tapestry throughout the day, then when it's time to actually sleep, like you have a blanket, it's all met. There are no holes, which is what we want. And I'm not even going to get into, I had in my little notes that we were going to talk about like cry it out and all that jazz. And I have an article that talks about that on my website, and it's all in my sleep book that really dives into the nitty gritty of the research. But I feel like we kind of already covered it,
Covered it enough that maybe it would like plant a seed that someone would want to kind of do some additional research and see.
Exactly.
If it doesn't work for them, if it's not resonating for them, if someone's telling you that this is the way it should be, but it doesn't feel right, it's time to kind of go swimming against the stream.
So just know that like it's developmentally and evolutionarily healthy and normal for a little one to have nighttime needs, and it is really good for them. and for you to honor those needs. And there's a ton of research that supports that.
Exactly. Well stated.
Yay. Okay, so let's get into our Q&A.
Okay.
So I posted in my Sage Parenting Tribe on Facebook that we're going to chat about sleep today and asked if they had any questions. And people want to know how to handle sleep with travel. So what's your experience with that been? How's that been for you?
It really hasn't been that big of an issue outside of, like, I literally have the stuff that I bring. So we usually move or manipulate the hotel beds to be a lot like our house. So that might mean moving the two beds together. Sometimes the beds won't move together, and so we'll put, like, a lot of times hotels will have those, like, travel cots. I think they have for, like, additional people, put them in between. And we figure out our way. Like, if there's two queens, that might mean Matt and a baby or a child, and then me and two other children are in beds. I bring a Himalayan salt lamp. I'm not kidding. And I also bring a diffuser. And I bring a diffuser for two reasons. One, I love pumping. I mean, hotels just often, if they don't smell sterile, they smell like some kind of fragrant thing that
it's like
doesn't
perfumes,
feel like home.
old cigarette smoke, and bleach.
Yeah, because the sheets often reek like bleach.
Yes.
Right? And I just pump that into the room, and then hotel rooms tend to be really dry, and I get just really, nobody sleeps well when the air is so dry.
Yeah.
Lots of water by the bed because, again, the hotel room is dry. And then I leave the bathroom light on with the door propped open because we're in a
So they can find
space.
their way, like, to the
and then we
bathroom.
talk about finding our space to bed. So we practice because the beds are not on the floor, so they often have like a big jump,
Right.
which also is very fun. So we do a lot of bed jumping beforehand too.
Totally.
But just to make sure a little one can get to the bathroom by themselves if they need to, or sometimes it might mean waking me up and we walk together. But I mean, it looks a lot like our bedroom at home.
So that is the one of my favorite benefits of, like, connection-based parenting is that it's so versatile because if all your little one needs for sleep is you, like, you could go anywhere and you can do anything, and they have everything they need. Like, so since we're kind of night owls, we would, like, go to concerts in the evening, we'd be out to dinner in restaurants, we can travel. I would, like, lecture in college classrooms. I would do all these big work things, give presentations. And my babies were, like, totally chill in the pouch. Yeah. They could sleep, they could eat, they could do everything they need because all they needed was me. So whereas, like, on the mainstream path, that might be seen as, like, a weakness, that might be seen as a dependence. I see dependence on all of the contraptions and rigid schedules and separation as unbearable dependence for me. Because if you are in this rigid schedule and you have all these devices and you need this chair and you need this pillow and you need this crib and you need, all these things, and it has to happen at this hour, everything will be off. Like, I start to feel like I'm, even just thinking about it, it feels like suffocating.
Sometimes when we're on those rigid routines, because we do have something early the next day, I can already feel myself the day before, knowing what we have to get to bed at and whether or not my children will be tired. Like, that, just the thought of it makes me, like, feel really freaked. So I can totally relate. And that goes to another thing, like, because I breastfed on demand, I never worried about those schedules ever. Yeah. It was such a relief for me. So
and breast milk that is produced in the evening and at night actually has these magic potion in it that induces sleep. So it, they even have
Miracle.
Yeah. Oh, hi, Autumn. Sorry, my dog just came in.
She's excited to see me. Don't flatter yourself.
I know. It's totally not about me. So my adorable puppy just ran in and jumped all over Melissa. Like, cares not for me. That's okay. Thanks, Dad. My dad's puppy sitting. So you produce, like, in your breast milk at night. It's different than the breast milk that's produced during the day, and it has this sleep-inducing chemical in it, which is
miraculous.
Freaking miraculous, right? So, like, when you're traveling, all that stuff is great. If you have had sleep challenges and we have utilized some specific touchstones throughout, like, the routine or specific things in the environment to really help move you into the space you want to be in with sleep, then just while you're traveling to bring as many of those, as much of that consistency as you can. Because in times of transition or in times of challenge for a variety of reasons, consistency is really, really key. Calm consistency. It's something I say all the time in coaching. If you're a coaching client, you've heard that so many times. Calm consistency. But there are some things, especially if you are living a sort of simple living or minimalist philosophy, like you have room in your suitcase to bring like that pillowcase that has the texture that is soothing to them. Or like you said, the diffuser. Like you've got space in your bag to bring that if you're not bringing 20 different outfits and a giant bag of makeup. And like you have space for that. So part of minimalism is eliminating what's not important to hold the space for what is. And so if you are in one of those spaces with sleep, just to bring as many of the things as makes sense and to hold as much of the consistency. And that includes like your emotional state. And your smell. And like sometimes when we're traveling, we can be stressed and we can just be using hotel shampoos and soaps, which changes so much of the chemical input that your little one is receiving.
We're alert too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, anytime
more
we walk into a
hypervigilant.
new environment, we can't help it. It's like programmed in us to be more alert. And so if we're alert, our babies, our kids, our spouses, our partners are feeling that alertness. It's
100%.
It's just what happens when we travel.
It's the cortisol.
It's why people don't poop,
Yes, it's the cortisol. The cortisol does that. So when we experience any sort of perceived threat to our security, the cortisol levels raise, and that actually shuts down digestion and it makes us hyper alert and all of these things. And that actually does go into the milk and is received as feedback for a little one, which is again important for survival. So they know that if they're in a dangerous situation, because they don't have the wherewithal cognitively to know that. So that's a cue for them. Cling closer to mom, there's danger around when they get that feedback through your milk. So then a lot of people say my baby's so needy. They'll quote unquote, they'll conceptualize it as that. But the cortisol is giving them a signal that they're in a new space that isn't as secure as their home space. And so they are ensuring that extra attentiveness on your part for them to ensure their safety, right? It makes like perfect sense from that perspective. So just keeping that consistency and again, thinking about all those senses and routine and sleep arrangement and all those things we've talked about, you just want to hold it bring as much consistency through your travel as you can. And what that looks like will, of course, vary depending on what your needs are and what we've sort of designed for your sleep. But even like a floor bed. In a hotel, you can get a crib and take the bottom little mattress out of the crib and put on the floor.
Exactly.
Easy. You can bring a lot more consistency if you are creative. Oh my God, creativity is like a huge piece that's missing from sleep. There are so many families that come to me so stumped. And the solutions just require a lot of creativity, And so bring that strand of creativity into your travels to see how you can meet those different needs.
Sometimes it's just letting go of those old things that we thought had to be, though. And that's where the creative juices start flowing, is when we really let go of our own rigidness.
100%.
Or our baby's expectations. I mean, it's kind of like really looking at infants and moms and how they sleep after the baby's born. You kind of have to let go of what adult sleep look like before baby came.
100%.
So travel sleep, I assume, is going to be the same thing.
Yep.
I mean, my hair's going to smell like bleach from the pool. I'm not going to get it out.
Yes.
And my kids are going to be a little more excited because there is a big, huge television that's larger than our bed. There's a refrigerator there, and there's all kinds of waters that say, some kind of name on it. And they're like, Mommy, what's this water? What's this water? What's this water?
What's this $12 water bottle, and can I have it?
Please don't open that.
And that thread of consistency looks different at different ages. So when we travel places, we often bring some granola bars. Each kid in their backpack gets a little handful of granola bars that we would eat normally, just so that no matter what new foods we're trying, which is so valuable and we love exposing to our kids for that, and going into making new friends and being invited to dine at their dinner table, and we love all that, and they feel good about pushing themselves in all those ways because they know they have that that little piece of consistency that they can fall back on. It's like, okay, I can try this dinner, and even if I only eat a few bites and decide it's not right for me, it's a safe thing to explore because I have this security, when we get
and
back.
I won't be hungry when I go to bed because I feel hungry now, and I tried that salmon and it wasn't good. Sorry.
Bingo. Exactly. And it's the same thing with sleep. Like you want to have just that thread of consistency that you can weave through, and the less stuff you're dependent on, the easier it is to bring that consistency with you as you travel.
Yeah.
So, a day in the life. I want you to describe your favorite day, and share with us why you loved it.
My favorite day?
Favorite day in recent time. It can be this week. I usually say a favorite day this week, but it doesn't rigidly have to be, because sleep, we're keeping it flexible. It doesn't have to be this
flexibility.
week.
Well, my favorite days are usually our adventure days, and our adventure days involve all of us. And my husband's been so busy that he hasn't been able to be with us at all time. But whenever I think, and as I'm looking at summer around the corner, I can't help but think of our favorite farm that we are at every single summer. Jubilee Farm out in Carnation.
I was just texting you about their happenings.
Yeah, it's a biodynamic farm owned by a family, and we've been going there every summer since we moved here. So it'll be our 4th year, I guess. Yeah. And we just travel out there somewhere around 11, get there at noon, have our picnic, and literally, if we don't go to farm school, which it isn't all summer, we pick vegetables, run with either bare feet or minimalist clothing. Mm-hmm. We're around all these beautiful, delicious vegetables and fruits, and we just kind of run free. I don't always know where my children are. They could be in the apple orchard. They could be with the cabbages. We might be exploring blueberries or raspberries together. We might be going out to do the U-pick with our family.
Free range children.
I mean, since you've been in my life and I've gotten to kind of get a little sampling of what it's like to be an unschooler. I mean, we have so many amazing adventures, and I could tell you our best adventure of the week, but when I think about what I'm most excited about, I see summer coming, I see longer days, I see children in and out, all age groups, running around that Jubilee Farm, and it's just a joyous, happy adventure that we do once a week, and I'm looking forward to it. So
when I think of summer, I think Melissa and her crew get to adventure with us.
Yes, because it's mostly just been Milo and me, and then for the last couple months,
which I love you and Milo, but we do miss Benjamin and Joseph.
Yes.
The Jubilee Farm, that was one of the first places you invited us when we moved here, and it was heaven.
It was, right?
Yeah.
I think you came to the Harvest Moon
ceremony
where we drove out on these big tractors and we howled at the moon coming up over the horizon with all the harvest. I know, it's just
and all the kids
a beautiful
just running,
thing.
Exploring,
and I can't help my eyes gazing upon all of your beautiful baskets. That one of our adventures last summer where we sat in Volunteer Park with just all of these amazing, cool, rad families
so
weaving
fun.
baskets with all the children, with Kayla, who
we're in
I
our
love.
So we're in my rec room right now, which is downstairs, and there are these shelves that have our materials on them, and on top of the shelves are all the baskets that we wove together on one of our it wasn't an hack school adventure. I think you organized it.
I just started organizing it.
Yeah.
And I'll organize it for the hack school again because I told Kayla, I'm like, I can't have a summer without weaving at least a couple baskets with you.
It's so funny. That's one of those things that if someone was like, would you like to be a basket weaver? I would have been like, not so sure. That's really my jam. But we say yes. We're like,
it's
new
a bunch
experience.
of a joke.
Yes.
You're gonna be going to doing some basket weaving.
Oh my goodness, I freaking loved it. I gave my basket shape and wove these colors
and she says
so
every
therapeutic.
basket is really about where you are right there, the story that you have to weave. I mean, there's so much texture and layers in basket weaving that I didn't know was really a labyrinth.
Yeah.
And Kayla is just my muse. I just think she's the most beautiful thing. And then that's another adventure that I'm looking forward to being with you and your crew.
We did 2 of those classes, and then I bought a box of materials so I could do it on my own. Have not done it on my own a single time since. And I've, of course, with minimalism, I want to look at all of these objects and dig underneath them. And for me, I want to do it in connection with other women. I don't know why, that feels an essential strand to it for me, but it does when I think about doing it on my own. I'm like, no, like, because we like story while we weave, and that like comes into the basket for me. I don't know. It's
totally.
I'm such a hippie. Saying this out loud, I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, such a hippie.
Modern day.
Yes, a cool, modern,
minimalist, chic, hippie.
All right, deep dive. What are your favorite resources for people to dive deeper into this topic? So I'm going to link in the show notes to my Put Cry It Out to Bed articles so families can, it's funny, typically what I hear people really, really being grateful for that article, it's about sharing that article with their family and friends or their partners, because like they sort of have this intuitive knowing, but they don't have like the data to articulate, the intellectual rationale behind it.
So or the space when you're, if it's in a postpartum time, which is where we get to when we start researching this stuff, right? Yeah. The baby's not sleeping, so I'm up on my phone looking at like what the heck is going on with my baby or me, and not understanding that this is all normal. That's the time. And then to have that space to be able to articulate to our partner or our spouse, like, this is normal. And could you just read this, because I couldn't even tell you what this article is about, but I know I agreed with every bit of it.
Yes, just sort of like passing it along to the people in your life that you want to speak to about this issue. And I'm pretty snarky, so there's some snark in there. A little bit. And then I'll link to my Sage Sleep book. I also really like the Gentle Sleep book by Sarah Ockwell Smith. It's the only other sleep book that I've actually approved. Okay, cool. That one, I've been in like contact with so many other sleep coaches, and tried really hard to find allies. And I've not found any that I feel enough in alignment with to recommend. So if you guys know of any, let me know. Any other like resources like James McKenna. I reference a ton of people in my Sage Sleep book who are like researchers, who are really doing great work in this area. But yeah, like find your allies, find the people who resonate with you, their message resonates with you. Unfortunately, on the issue of sleep, you have to investigate like deeper than you do in other areas, because lots of wolves in sheep's clothing, like which I hate. Like I'm like such a positive person. I hate to put that out there, but there are so many people out there who will tell you like, I'm a gentle sleep coach, and which is kind of what I call myself, but you have to dig deep.
It's like the beauty industry. I really think that there's so much product to sell and such a high need, and this social construct and expectation around it, that most of the people who are searching for this gentle sleep coach are sleeping in a place of desperation.
100%.
So unfortunately, in our desperation, we want to gravitate toward anyone that's saying those key words, but then when you get into the meat of the actual sleep training, you're like, this is baby wise. What are you doing?
Yes, like a beauty product that says natural. It's like totally the same thing. It's like, I'm a gentle sleep coach, like, and this is a natural body wash. Like, you gotta flip that bottle around and read those ingredients.
Take a look at what it's asking you to do.
Yeah. And we talked about like building your tribe in earlier episodes, and inviting people to a seat at the table in your support group. I think that was my episode on therapy with Dr. Cassidy Freitas. But you really have to do that with sleep as well, just being very intentional with who you want to invite onto your team, because it's got to be someone that's in alignment with that intuition and your values.
And sometimes, as hard as it is, and as much as you love them and care about them, family might not be your allies. And it's okay.
Yes.
Like, it's okay that you might find yourself at odds with how maybe your mom or your aunt or your sister or your brother-in-law are doing things, and just to kind of still trust yourself, even though the people that you normally may trust with that favorite recipe and all of these other things might not be your sleep ally.
Yes. Did y'all hear that? Yes, that is so important. And when we're navigating those relationships, especially with people we love and respect, there can be a lot of defensiveness, I think, on their part too, because when you say, I'm going to do it differently, they often hear you think how I did it is wrong. Yeah. And so navigating those relationships, I found it can be really helpful to come to them and say, especially if they're giving a lot of input, offering a lot of advice, saying, I have really received all the advice you've given as like the intention of you loving my baby and caring about me. And I really feel your intention behind that. So we've because we respect you and acknowledge all the wisdom and experience that you have, we've really carefully considered everything that you've told us, and we've gotten to know our unique, specific child, and we've done our own research, and we've decided that this choice is right for our family. And so you don't have to agree, but we do ask that you respect it. Like, to sort of like explicitly have that conversation is sometimes necessary, because otherwise you're going to like be constantly getting those messages that are undermining your peace with the choices that you make. And there are going to be times that even in those decisions that you will hit roadblocks or changes or a growth spurt, and you won't be getting sleep, and the temptation perhaps of those people might be to be like, that's not working, and you got to like kind of look at the long haul, and that this is like the ebb and flow of what it means to be a human being, and not just narrowly focus on that baby and that baby's sleep, because we as human beings, whether we've got a really big report due, or I'm a student and I'm studying for finals, you cannot judge my sleep during finals on my sleep for the rest of my life. Please don't. Yes, and for us on this path, we especially have a harder time, sort of getting naked in front of people and sharing our struggles and reaching out for support, because it feels like so many people are out to use us as evidence that this way of being in connection with your little ones is a path to failure. And so we hesitate to shed that, put down the mask and to connect, and so to find your people. You all need a Melissa in your life. I was just thinking how brilliant you are. You just circled back to the naked lady spa. Oh my God. You're freaking me out. I was like, did you do that on purpose? Like, you're like, we have to end the mask and be naked. Done. We have to end there. That's perfect. Thank you, Melissa, for chatting with me. And I want to say, your little one has been upstairs with my kids the whole time. When we sat down, I was like, Milo can come in and out and whatever. And I don't know what they're doing, but there's been lots of like jumping sounds and noise and happiness. So if you've been hearing sounds, that's the sounds of children in joyful connection upstairs. Yes. Thank you, friend. Thank you.